we're now going to be trying to do 3 presentations in the space we're trying to do 2. We probably won't make that.
You know, it's good, actually. Many of the things I have to say were consistent with what Terry said, so I can actually move pretty quickly. So what I want to do is I want to share with you kind of the perspective that we used and our motivations and methods that we're trying to bring sustainable engineering and design to more engineers in SOLIDWORKS. I don't really need to explain life cycle assessment because Terry did a great job of that. But the one thing that's different, Terry talked about kind of distilling it down into one number. What we chose to do is to actually break it down into 4 categories or 4 impact factors. One is carbon footprint, which everyone talks about, but we also want to give people a window on the total energy consumed during the life cycle of the product. Same thing with air acidification, which leads to acid rain. And then finally, water eutrophication, which is all about fertilizers making their way into streams and rivers and eventually coastal waters, algae blooms, and then all that kind of dies in that region. And depending on what your company does, maybe geographically where you're located, different factors might be more important to you than others. I think carbon footprint is the one that most people kind of fall back to, though. So sustainable design, this is kind of my take on what sustainable design is. And for me, when you kind of look at the traditional design engineer versus somebody that's very, very ecologically minded, I'm probably very, very close to the design engineer from a perspective standpoint. And so this is kind of the way I look at it from the layman's perspective, right? And so sustainable design, it's all about designs that you can produce, use, and the end of the life of the products can be carried on indefinitely, right, without using up whatever the relevant resources are. And while at the same time minimizing other effects on the environment. And like Terry talked about, what we're doing here to help engineers do sustainable design is we're incorporating LCA into the design tool. So why are engineers relevant? And again, very, very quickly, it's the decisions the design engineers make that really nail down what the environmental impact is of their designs. And for those of us in engineering and in CAD for a long time, we've spoken a long time about how it's the design engineer that really affects the manufacturing costs of the design. And sustainable matters or environmental impacts, very much the same thing here. And the thing is, a lot of engineers really don't know what their environmental impact is, or the environmental impact of the products that they produce. And even if they understand there is an impact to the work that they do and the products they provide, they really don't understand what the magnitude is. And then lastly, they don't know what steps they can take to improve it. So we want to try and address all of those. So why in all of this is CAD relevant? Now, I'm speaking only here from the perspective of SOLIDWORKS, but obviously looking at Autodesk and Siemens and all the other vendors. Our collective impact as an industry can be huge. Right, so in SOLIDWORKS case, and we've got over 380,000 commercial seats of SOLIDWORKS out there. When you add educational seats, and students are going to be a force to be reckoned with when everything's all said and done. We have nearly 1 million people using our product. So if we can equip a portion of those people, right, to at least be more aware of what their environmental impact is, okay, we can actually make really good things happen. So now, this is all really, really new in the manufacturing space, especially here in the United States. Other countries like Germany are a lot further ahead, but since it is so new, we can actually make a lot of, even the most modest improvement in different areas can be huge. And so when we talk about engaging people, first we can talk about awareness, just helping people understand how is it that our products are affecting the environment. And the vast majority of engineers and consumers alike really have no idea at all. They hear all about carbon footprint, but they really don't understand what it means other than, okay, the Earth is getting warmer. But how does this product make that happen? And they really have no clear insight on what that means. The next thing is to provide engineers a comprehensive understanding of how does the work I do actually affect the environment. Okay? And then in the end, we want to equip the engineers with tools that help them improve the environmental impact. And like I said a moment ago, all 3 of these, even if you do just the first, I think it's going to provide a huge benefit. And so if we can do all 3, wonderful. And the work I'm doing right now at SOLIDWORKS focuses on that last bit. So sophistication and reach. And again, this is more about just our perspective on the market. And you can slice and dice the market any number of different ways. And this is the way that we chose. And it helps kind of drive the actions that we've taken as we've developed this product. So, so sophistication and reach, right? There are companies out there. You take companies like BMW, Herman Miller, Steelcase, who I visited. They have departments dedicated towards this. It's a big part of their brand. And so they now have departments that spend millions of dollars to do the research, to understand the environmental impacts of their product, and to maintain the databases that they use. Okay, so it's a big, big effort. Then you can get into specialized software, like that of Sustainable Minds and PE International, where it allows, they amass these databases of environmental impacts, and allows companies, hopefully in a very, very easy way, to kind of model their design process and the material flow processes so that they can actually understand, as they're making design decisions, based on these models that we've constructed, what will the impact be. And a lot of the companies I just mentioned a moment ago, they do a lot of their own work and research, but they also make use of these types of tools. And then finally, where we kind of position Sage is we're still trying to make use of the extensive database of these specialized tools, but one of the things we're trying to do is simplify it. By simplifying it, we're going to make it accessible to far more people out there. So we're going to take away the ability to create customized models. We're going to rely on more generic models. Okay? And obviously we want to simplify the whole user experience and user interface for the product and really make it well integrated into the tool. And like I mentioned before, we want to leverage the CAD platform. Because again, it's out there being used by nearly 1 million people. So if we can make them aware, and then even better, have some of them take action based on the information we're providing, okay, again, we're going to make a lot of great progress. This is just a quick snapshot of Project Sage, which we demonstrated at SolidWorks World back in February. And the whole idea is, as I'm working on my design in SolidWorks, at any time I have the ability to bring up the LCA tool to understand that environmental impact. And again, it's looking at the entire process based on the technology that we've partnered with PE International on. So the engineer gets this, well, you always get to specify the material that you use in your design. So we take a look at that. We also allow the engineer to identify the manufacturing process. This is going to be die casted, this is going to be milled, injection molded. And then what region of the world is it going to be manufactured in? North America, Europe, Asia. We've actually broken out Japan individually. Same thing with use region. And based on that, there's things like, it's not only transportation distances and methods that are taken into account that contribute to environmental impacts, but it's also things like, well, if I'm using this product in the United States, well, energy is added to the electrical grid differently than, say, is in Europe, where in Europe they might use more nuclear energy versus here in the States we probably use a whole lot more fossil fuels. And again, the environmental impact is going to be different as a result. So we take a look at that, and then finally end of life in this. Oh, yes.
I'm just wondering, what type of benefits does a company get out of this? Like, is it, compliance is one side of it. Are they worried about their public image? Are they thinking they can reduce costs? And what are some of the, like, why would they be interested in this?
So it's companies that want to be more environmentally responsible, and companies that are going to start making that move to making it a little bit more of their brand. So they're going to want to make it more of their marketing efforts.
To help you out there in the venture capital business, we view green as a bubble and not investable. Well, I'm just telling you what we look at.
Sometimes there's regulations.
But if you don't do it, it's a negative.
Sometimes there's regulations like if your customer is demanding certain metrics, you literally lose that customer. I don't know if it relates.
That's what I meant by the negatives.
Yeah.
See, we're in an interesting time right now in the mechanical space. Because I'll tell you, our customers, I'm sure it's all exactly the same across the board. We have a small part of our population that's going to be very, very interested, very, very passionate about this. So the uptake in the product amongst that particular segment of our customer base is going to be very, very high. problem is it's not very, very big. And so we have, I apologize, I'm not going to share it at the moment, but we have things that we're building into the product and things that we plan to do from a strategic standpoint in our marketing to help bring up the awareness of sustainability in the engineer's mind. So we're going to provide visibility to the tool so that they actually get insights on sustainability without even first asking the question.
Right.
Some people will deliberately ask the question, and we're going to present them with results. Other people won't ask the question, but we're going to give them those insights anyway.
Right.
And the hope is that a certain percentage of those people say, hey, cool, tell me more.
He's got to have an answer. He's got to have an answer. And for example, the initial market is not insignificant in terms of the fans and the passionate people. Hybrid car sales are now way down. However, that peak element was worth capturing.
Right.
I'm talking financial now.
Yeah.
Forget religion for a minute. And that peak was worth capturing on hybrid cars. So he's got a segment of the market that wants this response. And what it does for the company is satisfy that want. But as I say, it's a green bubble in the financial community. It's not something we would invest in as a startup.
And we are hopeful that
Oh,
more
no, I am
people will
too.
actually...
I am too, but I'm just telling you that at the moment I'm trying to stay away from opinions. I'm trying to stay with fact, which is one of the problems I have with thought.
I'll give you one case. Interface carpet. So they changed the business model. They take the carpet back. They have problems because they use nylon 6 and they get some 6/6 back, and they had problems with that. But it's pretty close to recycling. They redesigned the carpet to use half the mass. So that's a big help. So they looked really good about a year ago when petroleum prices were high because their raw material cost was constant. Others were going up. That looked really good at the time. They're in deep cash trouble right now because they're dependent on the construction business. Their sales cutting down. So
Between us is truth.
What's that?
Between me and Doc, there's truth
Fair
somewhere.
enough.
Between all of us.
Right where Rick is sitting there.
And so finally, you get specified just a small number of inputs. Again, we measure the size of the part, and then that information is fed to the PE engine, which helps us in the environmental dashboard down below get that breakdown of the environmental impact in terms of carbon footprint, energy consumed, air acidification, and water eutrophication. And then you can do things like you can establish a baseline so I can compare how my design is doing relative to a previous iteration on the design. And obviously you can do the assessment on individual parts and on entire assemblies. And I forget exactly how it's phrased, but there's this notion that the things that you monitor are the things that you're going to strive to improve. And so the hope here is we're going to give people this opportunity.
What you
I
measure.
got to remember that one. That one's a good one.
Here's the way of putting it. What you measure changes behavior.
Okay. Okay. So that's just a quick peek on what the SAFE project looks like and what we're hoping to achieve with it. Like I mentioned before, PE International is our partner in this. So again, they've taken their technology and they've kind of distilled it down into a component technology that we can plug into SolidWorks. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it available on every single seat of SolidWorks 2010 this fall. So there's going to be two different levels of the product. One allows you to assess individual parts. And then the other thing is you can buy a professional level product, and that will allow you to do an assessment on entire products and a few other things. But back to PE International, they've got extensive experience doing life cycle assessment. They provide software and consulting services, and they've kind of built up this well-vetted database that's international. As you can see from the customer list, they're represented in all countries and in all sorts of industries. And so they've been a really good partner in all this. But when everything's all said and done, from what we're trying to do, again, is we want to make this more accessible. We're not going to make it more precise, right? We're not going to make it as accurate as kind of the full-blown GABI software that PE International provides. What we're doing is we're taking a strategy very similar to what we use with our simulation product. Right? We acquired Cosmos finite element software many years ago, and finite element analysis was the domain of the specialist, right? Who really knew how to create a model, how to establish the boundary conditions to get pretty accurate results, which you could then take to certify a particular design. And what we've done is we've made simulation a lot more accessible and easier, and it allows engineers to do that finite element analysis on a more regular basis. Is it as accurate as what the analyst will do? No, but it gives them a good sense. Is this the right direction versus another? So same thing here. When I'm working with Sage and SOLIDWORKS, I'll know, well, if I choose to use this plastic versus another, am I making things better or worse from an environmental standpoint? And so that's kind of the insights we hope to give engineers, and they can do it real time while they're doing their design. So that's pretty much it.
Very good. Thank you, Rick. Question. I'm going to get the next presentation. Please carry on the conversation.
Maybe this is next phase, or maybe you've already thought about it. How are you going to set up a renewal of the underlying data? Because it's based on current processes, so somebody may have made a process improvement, even in their own company, that dramatically reduces the environmental impact of some material I take.
Right.
And I mean, that seems to be an important aspect that we need to really think about.
But it sounds
Probably have this vigorous learning. I really like the term, because at least that's how I interpret it.
Yeah.
The term is vigorous learning.
But you have to realize that the data that's used here is aggregated data, and so it doesn't change from a kind of aggregated perspective very quickly. So we update SOLIDWORKS once a quarter, around that kind of time scale. And so as PE's updating their database, SOLIDWORKS will be updated on that time frame, because the data, unlike Terry's software, it's not online. It actually is built into the product and it's running on their desktop. So, but again, we're of the opinion that it doesn't have to update. The data at least doesn't have to update real time.
Yeah, refresh doesn't change that.
Does your data source have forecasts?
Then what's the point of innovation? I mean,
No,
everybody
I
in
think
the world is... sorry, we shouldn't have two conversations.
We should have a separate data conversation, because it's a very complex issue.
I think the data is related to standard materials and standard processes, right? So if you're picking a finish, you're picking a dimension and a material, but you have a lot of other levers outside of this, right, to influence.
Well, Gavi does, and that's the software that PE International provides. Again, there's a level that you want more precision in the model that you create and the results that you create, then you use Gavi and you create a very precise representation. Then it becomes very important to have the most up-to-date information in terms of data that from my particular supplier with these particular materials that I'm using.
It's sort of a